Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Canadian jazz guitarist and educator Ron Ledoux. We had a good talk about his debut release, the 2022 CD A Stone's Throw Away. He was born in Stanstead, Quebec, located on the Canadian-U.S. border. Over the years, he has performed extensively in Canada, Europe, and the United States. These days, he is based in Montreal and is known for his musical versatility and his passion for jazz improvisation. It's a great story. Enjoy.
Thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Wow, great.
Yeah, you bet, man. So your new 2022 CD, A Stone's Throw Away, it's your first release. Talk to me about what it means for you for this to come out during this particular time. You know, kind of been 2 years of COVID, and you know the need for live music and recorded music is probably higher than ever. So how does this release feel?
Well, you know what? Like, COVID was the perfect occasion for me to do this first album because, you know, I've been working as a freelance musician for all these years. And when that stopped, basically gave me and a few musicians, well, most of us, a lot of time to work on original tunes. So, like the bass player on the album, Gilbert Jonas, like, we had never recorded an album of original music yet. We'd done standards, we'd done this, so we're like, okay, this is the project we've been wanting to do forever. So we just really dove into it and started writing tunes and getting it together, making little demos. And when things opened up, like the studios opened up after like the first wave or so, that's when we recorded it. So it kind of created an opportunity, ironically enough. Even though we couldn't play or anything, it was like perfect to get this project together, and it was like on our bucket list, basically, you know.
Talk to me a little bit about what you hope the listener gets. I mean, this is your debut as a solo artist. It's a pretty big deal. What are you hoping they get from this release?
Well, you know, we were kind of going for a vibe. We spent a lot of time listening to music, like with the bass player. He's like a really good buddy, and we're like, okay, we kind of want to make a record that sounds like what we like to listen to. And a lot of that has to do with like the kind of Blue Note vibe and all that thing. So that's what we wanted to get across, you know, the sound, the groove, the moods in the tunes, that whole energy. And so that's what we were aiming for. So we're hoping that people are going to catch on to that aspect of it, you know, like tunes that are, you know, that focus on swing and groove and that kind of harmony back from Larry Young records, all those Grant Green records, all those albums that we just love to listen to. Well, we wanted to get a bit of that, or as much as we could, basically, on the record.
Let's kind of go back into before we go back into your roots here, I'm curious, you know, over this long period away from live music and the life that we knew before, what did you realize about yourself over this quarantine kind of lockdown period that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger as we reemerge and you promote this album and you get back to the live stage?
Well, you know, in my case, it kind of reinforced how much I love playing jazz because, like I was saying before, I play a lot of different stuff, like as a freelance musician, and most of the music is not jazz-oriented. So for me, it just really confirmed how much I want to put more emphasis on this part of what I do, because it's always been something that I do parallel to doing, you know, all the regular gigging and doing production shows and this and that, touring with singers. This really, you know, it put that into perspective that, yeah, I just love doing jazz, and this is really great doing a jazz record. And we've been getting really good response from the radios and everything, so it's kind of encouraging at the same time. It's like, okay, this is maybe something I should have got into earlier, so it's happening now, and that's great. So I think, yeah, it just put the emphasis really on the jazz aspect of what I like to do.
So let's go back to your roots. Talk to me about your childhood and kind of how you got into music and more specifically jazz.
Started basically learning guitar when I was, 10 or 11 and doing the whole rock thing, and went through the 80s having all those heavy guitar players and learning how to try to play a bit like Eddie Van Halen and whoever back in the day. And basically when I went to college is when I discovered jazz and really got hooked on it from the get-go, and just seeing all these players in this approach. I remember seeing Pat Metheny, we're talking Kansas City and all. The first time I saw Pat Metheny on television, I was blown away just seeing a guitar player improvise like that. I had never really seen that. And it just changed, like, everything of how I could imagine playing the guitar after that. It's like, wow, okay, I want to study improvisation. So went through college, university, and all that, and, then, started getting busy as a musician, and that's it. Always kept it going on the side, doing gigs, playing standards, and jamming with people. So I would say that's how it really through college, meeting other musicians, and that's how it started anyways.
So what was your first live jazz show that you saw in person that really blew you away?
Well, it was a local group that were somewhat famous in Europe as well as in Canada. They were called Uzeb in French, and they were like a power trio at that point with really, really high-level players, and that was the first live jazz show I saw, like sitting 3-5 feet away from them and having it just played right in front of me. So that was like a grand moment, just seeing them. I was thinking, like, the Matheny thing, I actually was really lucky to have a lesson with him, like, in Montreal. In my early 20s, there was a contest his record company put together. And so I won that contest, and I got to spend, like, 3 hours with Pat before one of his shows. And that was totally mind-boggling, because he was sort of, at that point, my idol, my favorite guitar player. And, so that was pretty cool for a 20-year-old or 21-year-old or...
It's interesting because right before the pandemic in January of 2020, I was in the Kansas City Metro, and I moved to Lee Summit, his hometown. So I hear a lot. So I hear stories about him all the time. And, they just released a book this summer that went through his early years of getting groomed in the Kansas City area before he moved on to New York. And I'm curious, during that time, I mean, I've always heard he's such a nice guy and down to earth and all of that. What was it like to be with him, like on a person-to-person level?
Well, it was really cool. He's so down to earth. He's walking around, first of all, with a metronome in his pocket. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm all about practicing time. So he just puts that on and starts demonstrating things that I'd never seen anybody do in front of me, like, okay, this is how you play, like, right on the beat. This is how you play lead back. This is how you can push it. And this is how you should be able to control all this stuff, and do it like, at will. And here he is just demonstrating it so clearly. It was really amazing. But yeah, it was great. He was totally honest, like, okay, you have this good, you have this that's working out, okay, you need to work on this. And he was saying, you need to gig, you really have to get out there, get any kind of gig you can get, because, you just can't replace experience by no matter how much you practice. And that's something he was saying he did so much back when he was in Kansas City, is he had the opportunity to play so much as a teenager, So by the time he was 18, he had done quite a few gigs, like probably a lot more than most people get to do at that age. And I think that made a big difference from what he seemed to be saying. So his advice, and get as many gigs as I could do, no matter what style they were. Play with good musicians. That was his other thing. Play with guys that are way better than you.
Cool. So, you're kind of a veteran. You've been around for a while. What do you try to teach younger musicians? I mean, speaking of Pat teaching you, what do you, in turn, try to teach younger musicians based on what you've learned over the years?
Well, I actually teach music at the elementary level. So I'm like trying to get young kids, exposed to a whole bunch of different elements, like listening to music and learning to play it at a very, a level that's appropriate for their age and everything, but, just getting exposed to music, which is not necessarily something that'll happen to every kid. So I think that's pretty cool. They get to hear things, and they see me doing it too. Like, they see me, okay, I'm releasing this album, so I kind of walk them through how it's going on, and okay, so this is what it sounds like, and this is how we record in a recording studio, and this is how I write a tune and stuff like that. So even though they're really young, I think they find it cool that somebody's doing it in front of them like that, and it's to get them in as early as we can, And so hopefully there'll be a jazz public in 10, 15, 20 years, so that's it. Absolutely. I'm working on that generation.
Cool, man. Absolutely. So what do you like the best about being a musician, a professional musician? What do you look forward to the most every day about this process?
Playing with other great players. I mean, that's just the best. I mean, hanging with musicians, you can't beat it. It's like the groove locking into good players and the interaction that it creates. It's always fun, no matter what style it is. When the music's happening and grooving, to me, you just can't beat that. It's kind of hard to put it into words, but I'm sure we all know it. It's beyond anything that exists to me in normal life. You know, it goes to somewhere else. It's just kind of magical, I guess. Magical, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other dimension.
So, yeah, totally. Well, and then kind of to elongate that idea there, when we do return, when things start returning to more live music, what do you hope we all realize collectively, musician and audience, about the power of live music that we've largely been away from for almost 2 years now?
Well, I'm hoping that people realize how essential it is, you know, and to get out there and listen too. Like, that's the thing, how important it is to you know, make the effort of going to a jazz club, going to see a concert, go out and to live the experience of hearing music in like a physical way. I mean, sure, listening at home is something, but we all know that the live experience, you just can't replace that. So, yeah, I'm hoping that people realize the value and the importance of that and the power of it, the sheer power of communicating through music in a room with people live, the energy, the vibe, again, many things that are hard to describe, but how, you know, it's a ceremony between, you know, the musicians and the public and the audience. Yeah, I'm hoping that the value of that is noticed and that people put importance on it and value. Just make the effort, like I was saying, going out and doing it.
So everyone has an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, your students. But ultimately, you're the one living your life. You have a perception of yourself. Who do you think you are?
Wow, good question. Who do I think I am? Well, you know, deep question. Well, many things, I guess. I do see myself primarily as a jazz musician because I value improvisation above anything in the music world. So that's definitely a thing that's right there. And, you know, well, I'm one of those guys in his town, just making music, trying to play as much as I can, getting as many opportunities to play and to continue creating. You know, I do think something that's kind of interesting is, you know, I'm moving on close to 50 now, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do, like, from now on. So it's bringing on, like, a new phase in my life. So who am I? I think that defines who I am now. It's something that changes constantly, and presently it's moving very much into a more jazz-oriented.
Right on.
Hard to define.
Yeah, no, it is. It's not an easy question for sure. But Ron, hey, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it. Good luck with the album and the return to the stage.
Thanks. Well, thank you for having me on the show, and really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Montreal, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Ron for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.